Hello. So here we have the box, the box of the CDs that I'm getting rid of. Now I've talked, I've talked about this a lot over the last many months, and I made a video about it last week. And this is so far the CDs that I have decided I'm going to get rid of. Well, actually, no, get rid of is probably not right. The CDs that I've decided that I'm not keeping in my collection, and I've what do you call, relegated them to this box, this old gin ramen box that we had lying around the house. And as to what I'm going to do with them from there, I haven't decided whether I'm going to try to sell some of them, because I think actually some of them, there would be a bit of, at least on some of the groups I'm a member of, the CD trading, buying and selling groups on Facebook, I see things of some of these, the ilk of some of these that are sold. So yeah, so like I said, I showed a lot of these last week, so I'm not going to go through all of them one by one, but a lot of them I actually haven't shown. So starting down here, we got All Saints, Barbra Streisand, Boston, Julian Casablancas. Now the reason so there's different reasons why I'm getting rid of some of these. Some of them I'm getting rid of because I don't want them and I don't listen to them. Some of them I'm getting rid of because I have doubles, such as the Julian Casablancas Phrases for the Young album, which is actually a really good album. I like a lot, but I already have a copy of it. I found another copy of it in much better condition, so sorry, that's a bit awkward, isn't it, how I'm doing that with the camera. Rising Sand by Rob Platt and Alison Krauss. Now, there was a lot written about that album, and I think it won a Grammy at the time, but I listened through to it, and it didn't do much for me. Robbie Williams, Soul to Soul, Shay Fu, Navigator. Now, I've got a best of Shay Fu greatest hits. Shay Fu is a New Zealand singer. I don't know how would you really describe as hip hop, R&B, but he kind of started in a band called Supergroove, and Supergroove were much more of a kind of a funk, alternative rock, almost metal type band, funk metal maybe. He was one of the singers, the vocalists in that band, but he went out on his own on a solo career and kind of was much more towards the hip hop, R&B side of his stuff. And I like some of his stuff. I don't like all of his stuff. That's probably his biggest album, Navigator. But I have as I said, a best of CD of his, which better covers his career. The Eagles. Now, I've got a lot of Eagles best of, so I'm getting rid of, I think, 2 of them and keeping 1 of them. Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion 1, because that's a double. Rick Wakeman, never listened to it. 1927. This was on the list of where I didn't know about what this was exactly. I listened to it, and there was nothing especially special about it, so that's why I put it in here. Bananarama, James Taylor goes. That's a double. Herman's Hermits. The reason I'm getting rid of this is because this is a live album, and Herman's Hermits are not a band I like enough to need a live album of. The Beatles 1 compilation, that's a double, Captain and Tennille. Dan Fogelberg. I can't exactly remember why. I might actually give this another listen. I can't remember. I remember I bought this because a few years ago I listened a lot to the Beyond Yacht Rock podcast, which I've talked about before on one of these videos, which I was a big fan of. And it really opened me up to a lot of new music and kind of that late 70s, 80s era of music that I wasn't necessarily that familiar with. And one of the names that comes up about is this guy, Dan Fogelberg. So I saw this secondhand for 50 cents, so I thought I'd grab it. And I listened through to it once and didn't think much of it, but I only really gave it a one-time try, so I probably should listen to that again. So I might put that down here. Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, that's a double. The music of Jean-Michel Jarre, that is I have another compilation that's better of his stuff. Whitney Houston, I've got another greatest hits that's better than this one. So this is that one. I have the one where she's on the front of the album and there's a whole bunch of like platinum and gold discs on the wall, and I think she's drilling into them, like hanging them up. You might be familiar with that. Manic Street Preachers, that is a double. Everything Must Go, great album. Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. Now I did an actual whole video about those, and said that I wasn't a fan and I don't know why I bought them. But I reckon that's the kind of thing that would sell. Whole Celebrity Skin, that's a double. George Michael, showed that last week. New Groove Alliance, now that was on a list of maybes, and I actually got around to listening to that last week, and I didn't like it. You can see here what we've got. No. What did this say here? Featuring tracks by Grey Boy, New Jazz Hustlers, The Poets of Rhythm, Saint Germain, Antibalas, Down to the Bone, Lorca, Cold Cut. Now I've heard of some of them. I've heard of Cold Cut. I've heard of Saint Germain. But I don't know what. I put on and I just maybe it was the mood. I've talked about that before, where sometimes the mood you're in can really affect how you hear something, and where it might kind of Anyway, where was I? I was up here somewhere. Talked about that last week. John Digweed, don't like him. Stevie Wonder, that's a double. Sacred Spirit, that's a double. This thing here, Emo, This Is My Home. I have no memory of that, but I would have put it here for a reason. Ben Harper. Let's talk about Ben Harper for a second, because Ben Harper is an artist that I have actually at some stages of my my life enjoyed his music to a certain extent. But how can I put this? He was really popular in New Zealand, more popular in New Zealand than almost anywhere else in the world around the late 90s, early 2000s, especially that, what was the album? So this is Welcome to the Cruel World, Fight for You, maybe that's in here. No, it's not. Fight for Your Mind was the one with Ground on Down on it, with the one with the skateboard and they're skating in like a bowl. Might be familiar. Actually, fuck, I don't know. Anyway, there was an album around that time, around, it would have been about 97. When did this come out? This was like 95, I think. And if you don't know Ben Harper, I'm sure you do know Ben Harper, but if you don't know, he kind of almost kind of like quite, at least in this era, is quite folky. It's kind of just a man with a guitar type music, sometimes with a more fuller band sound. But then as time went on through the album, he also was quite famous for using a lap steel or a pedal steel guitar. I'm trying to see the year. Gee, there's no goddamn year on this. 93. Oh, she's 93, that early. Okay, so then the Fight for Your Mind might have been more like 96 then. She's been around a lot longer than people would think. Around the Fight for Your Mind, Will to Live, and Burn to Shine era, he was really big in New Zealand. And I've talked about this before. Certain artists seem to do better in New Zealand than they do in other countries, and it's kind of strange which ones seem to hit and which other ones don't. Apparently, early in Tool's career, they were selling exponentially more albums in New Zealand than anywhere else in the world. And if you did it on a per capita basis, they were like 10 times platinum in New Zealand. But, obviously New Zealand's got a small population. So even if you're selling fucking stacks of CD or albums in New Zealand, it's still going to be only a little about compared to the US or other places. But it's always strange, the bands that kind of seem to hit. And this guy here, Ben Harper, was one of them. He was just seemed to be really popular and seemed to tour here a lot and just be really popular, especially with the kind of younger crowd. And so I have kind of a feeling about him. Same with Sublime, that band Sublime. I associate in my mind Ben Harper and Sublime with certain kinds of times in my life and certain kinds of people that I should say didn't, because this is when I was like fucking a teenager or in my early 20s. People I didn't like. And a kind of scene or atmosphere that I didn't like. And I've talked about it a little bit before that, how can I put it? A lot of where I grew up, especially the area I grew up, I've got hiccups if you wonder why I keep breathing, was into the kind of very Southern California, chill out, I don't know. I can't. Whenever I try to describe this, I can't describe it. That kind of stuff, like I've talked about before, reggae, especially the kind of we call barbecue reggae in New Zealand, or light reggae, is really popular in New Zealand. Where there seems to be a certain, maybe connected to marijuana culture, which is quite big in New Zealand as well. Even though it's still illegal in New Zealand, it's very, 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 very common. It's almost kind of seen as a normal thing, just like drinking a beer or something. And so therefore, that kind of interconnects with the music that's popular, and also the kind of, and I should only say, I'm fucking tying myself up into knots trying to explain this, and it's really not important. I'm going to skip it and talk about it another day. But just for now, I'll say that I don't like Ben Harper. I don't know why I bought this. There's one album of his I do like, which is The Will to Live, which came out about 97, 98. And there's a few songs on that I like, even now, and I actually own it. It's in my shelf. But outside of that, when I listen to it, I have too much baggage associated with that in my own mind that I don't enjoy Ben Harper. The other ones I showed last week, we got the Indian music I talked about, George Michael. Oh, there's the other Eagles compilation. I said there's two of them. Cobra Starship, Jack Johnson, Green Day. That's a double. Now these three here, the Incredible String Band. This is something I think could sell if I found a buyer, because I feel this band is kind of band that would have a very dedicated following, but that following is relatively small. So it's about finding someone who actually wants to buy them. However, their stuff is quite rare. I've never seen it before. Before I bought these or after I bought these, I've never seen anything by the Incredible String Band for sale secondhand. So I picked up 3 albums of theirs. Was it Liquid Acrobat As Regards the Air? The fuck? What does that say? Wee Tam and The Big Huge. Is that what it says? Yes, The Big Huge. Now, I heard the Incredible String Band, that name, a lot, talking about bands, and I thought they were more prog, in the vein of Yes, or early Genesis, that kind of British prog. They aren't. I actually only listened to one of these albums, and I disliked it so much that I didn't even bother listening to the other ones. They are much more of a kind of folk, just folk. I don't know what else you could class them as. And maybe their other music isn't as folky, but to me, it would just sound like boring folk. Boring 60s era folk. And folk is something that I like within reason, but if it's just too pure folky from beginning to end, then no, it's not for me. Now you can see that this came out in 68, it's reissued in 93. This came out in 71, reissued I don't know when. And this came out, you can tell just by the photo that it's fucking old. 68 as well, they put out 2 albums in 68. Doesn't say it was reissued. However, like I said, I feel that if I could find someone who was looking for the Incredible String Band, well, that's always the thing, isn't it? So I got these for $1 each. I feel that someone would pay a decent, I'm not saying like fucking hundreds of dollars, I'm just saying maybe $5 to $10 each of those, maybe. But I certainly don't want them in my collection. Not my kind of music. What else we got here? The Cone concert by Keith Jarrett. I was going to say Jeff Jarrett, the WWF wrestler from the 1990s. Keith Jarrett. I have doubles of that. But Seriously by Phil Collins, that's a double as well. The Yeah Yeahs Fever Hotel, that's a double. And then we got these two here. Teacher, Poetry and Airplanes. I have listened through to that. Whatever it sounded like, I have zero memory, but it was put into the box of you don't want to keep this. So I'm just going to trust me 6 months ago that I made the correct decision. This was released in 2003. I've never heard of them before or since. Teacher. I don't know if it's actually teacher, Teacher. I've got a feeling it's German. And I don't know why that. Maybe when I bought it, I researched about it. But anyway, that's gone. And Forest Fiction by Teacups. This is something that came out in 2009 and it's female, it's all girls singing. Maybe one girl, but I think it's multiple females singing. And it's very twee and self-aware and not my kind of thing. There we go, there's three females. When I say twee, what I mean is, I don't even know how to describe it really. Talita, Chelsea, and Elizabeth. I'm trying to think in my mind how to explain it. Again, I had quite a visceral, similar to the Incredible String Band, I had quite a visceral reaction to this when I listened to it. Just kind of like, ugh, like turn this off. Sometimes you'll have that. I don't actually have it very often because I typically don't. Even when I choose a CD that I have no idea about, like this, I usually can get a pretty good idea of what the music is and whether I might even a little bit like it just by looking at the artwork and maybe the name of the band and the song names, If this was like fucking, I don't know, Jamal Watkins and had a picture of an African-American guy with a goatee on the front and the songs were like Loving You and Oh My Baby and Tonight's Gonna Be a Great Night, I could imagine that was going to be kind of like a soul R&B type album, and I would know that I wouldn't buy that because it's not the kind of music I like. I would just naturally avoid that, even though I've never heard of Jamal Watkins. I've just made that name up. But Forest Fiction by the Teacups, I thought, well, that kind of sounds interesting. Forest fiction of nature and the teacups, or by not the teacups, but teacups. That also sounds kind of, I've never heard of them, but it sounds kind of a little bit out there or different. Magic, birds, skylark, lots of nature, pastoral type imagery. Hornets wave at me from across the sea, and so I get this kind of feeling. I think, well, could be something I quite like. Some pretty girls. I don't actually know if they are pretty, to be honest. Well, yeah, you wouldn't kick them out of bed, would you? Maybe, I don't know. That, who knows? With photography, it's never clear, is it? However, I put it on, and like I said, I had quite a visceral reaction to like turn this shit off. And like I said, twee. And what do I mean by twee? Twee is that kind of like cutesy, but I don't mean bubblegum pop cutesy or J-pop cutesy. I mean more like, I don't know what I mean, but I mean I didn't like it, and so I don't want it in my collection. Now, like I said, I don't actually know what I'm going to do with these. I think I'm going to take out the sellable ones, such as Guns N' Roses, Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, incredible string band, maybe the Elton John ones, maybe the Eagles, all the greatest hits. If I can, I see a lot of people trying to sell them online, and they're so easy to come by that it's not really even really worth the time. But anyway, some of those ones, more notable ones, I'll try to sell. If not, I think I'm just going to keep them in this box and store them somewhere, maybe in the garage. We have kind of like a garage underneath the house that's not completely sealed, as in it gets very cold in there and quite damp. So mold is a risk. So I've got to keep that in mind. Maybe I'll just put it in a cupboard somewhere. But space is a premium in our house because it's a small house and there's 3 of us in it. And one of those 3 is a 7-year-old boy, and he has a lot of shit. And what I mean, he has a lot of toys, and books and stuff. And the house is kind of taken over with his stuff, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, but it makes space at a premium, and there's not really room to just kind of stick a box of CDs somewhere. So got to think about where I'm going to put it. Anyway, so that's kind of like maybe the conclusion of me talking about getting rid of CDs over the last 6 months. I've done this is the 3rd video, 3rd or 4th. And I'm sure there's going to be some that will be added to the empty space down here over time. But I will say that I'm much more discerning when buying CDs now. A lot more discerning. There was a period there, probably about 2 years ago, where I was a lot more free and easy, just picking up stuff. And that worked out really well sometimes because I found things that I had no idea about and I really liked. But in other ways, it added things to my collection that I didn't necessarily need or want. So going forward, I believe, or I am, because I know it's happening right now, I'm a lot more selective, discerning. I don't just pick out anything. And so maybe there won't be as many added. I'm sure there will be 1 or 2 over the years, though. Anyway, hopefully that was really, really interesting for many people, or at least one person. Thank you for watching.